exactly would you do this plasmapheresis? Basically, there are three levels of indications. There is absolute, relative, and as a rescue therapy. Absolute is well when there is well established evidence that TPE is the recognized first line therapy. Relative is when it is recognized as a second line treatment, either with the something or alone as a standalone therapy. And rescue is when there is a limited evidence but there is a plausible therapeutic rationale for it. And there is something called ASFA, the American Society for Apheresis, which has given guidelines for this. So in 2019, these guidelines were released. And according to this, they have divided it into four categories, where category one is the first line, that is, it is accepted as a standard primary therapy, like for TTP, for GBS, for Goodpasture syndrome. Category two is second line, where like I mentioned earlier, it could be standalone or an adjunctive therapy, like in thyroid storm, cryoglobulinemia. Category three is individualized. So the role is not established, but it relies solely on your clinical judgment. So in case of sepsis or multi-organ failure. And category four is when it is harmful. So it should not be done. And they have also given grades of recommendations, where grade one is basically a strong recommendation, grade two is a weak recommendation, and the A says that it's high quality evidence, B shows that it is moderate quality evidence, and C shows that it is low quality evidence. So, in the absolute indications, you have the Guillain-Barré syndrome, GBS. Here, it basically acts by removal of the antibodies, and the replacement fluid is albumin or plasma. You have to exchange 1 to 1.5 times the plasma volume over 5 to 6 sessions done over 10 to 14 days. This is a category 1, grade 1A recommendation. For the Goodpasture syndrome, it is done over 10 to 20 days. That is either daily or on alternate days. If there is diffuse alveolar hemorrhage, then it is a category 1 recommendation. But if it is dialysis independent renal disease, then you do a category 1 grade, it has a category 1 grade 1B recommendation. But if the patient is already dialysis dependent, which means that there is irreversible damage to the renal system that has already occurred, then it is a category 3 recommendation. Then in another absolute indication would be in the hyperviscosity syndrome, which has a category 1 grade 1B recommendation. In catastrophic antiphospholipid syndrome, again a category 1 grade 1C recommendation. And in NMDA receptor antibody encephalitis, it has a category 1 grade 1C recommendation. In our myasthenia gravis, it is a category 1 recommendation when it is done in case of acute short-term treatment, like when there is myasthenic crisis. But in case of long-term treatment, it only has a category 2 or a category 2 with a grade 2B recommendation. For thrombotic thrombocytopenic purpura, it has a category 1, grade 1A recommendation, and it is done daily until the platelet count becomes more than 1,50,000. LDH approach is normal, and after all of this has happened, you continue it for 2 more sessions and then stop. Another thing is adjunctively, they use these therapeutic options where there's corticosteroids, rituximab, and caplacizumab, which is a recombinant ADAMTS13 molecule. And in case of acute liver failure, here there are two things. If it is a high volume plasma volume exchange, which means there is 8 to 12 liters of plasma volume that is exchanged, then it is a category 1 recommendation. But the regular kind is a category 3 recommendation. Relative indications would be in case of refractory thyroid storm. This has a category 2 grade 2C recommendation. Adjunctively, you have to use all the other drugs like propylthiouracil, corticosteroids, beta blockers, and all of that. This is done daily 2 every 3 days until the systemic response is controlled. Another thing would be ANCA-associated vasculitis with diffuse alveolar hemorrhage, acute disseminated encephalomyelitis, which has a category 2 category 2 it comes under. And in case of atypical hemolytic uremic syndrome, that is traumatic microangiopathy complement mediated, it is a category if it was because of factor H auto antibody, it is a category 1 recommendation. If it is because of complement factor gene mutation, then it is a category 3 recommendation. In case of autoimmune hemolytic anemia, again, based on whether it is cold agglutinin or warm, if it is cold, then category 2, warm would be category 3. And in case of chronic acquired demyelinating polyneuropathies, category 1, grade 1B response is seen. Then our rescue indications would be in heparin-induced thrombocytopenia, cryoglobulinemia vasculitis, pancreatitis with severe hypertriglyceridemia, paraneoplastic neurological syndromes, and in case of poisoning. Mushroom poisoning is category 2, and everything else, your envenomation and all drug overdoses are category 3. Coming to how do you do it during pregnancy, it is safe during pregnancy, but the caveat is that in pregnancy the plasma volume increases by 50% in the second trimester, but it is assumed that the increase in the weight is reflecting the increase in the plasma volume. So you take that in mind and use the actual weight of the patient while calculating the plasma volume. But of course there is a higher risk of hypotension which is seen in every pregnant patient because the venous return is impaired by compression due to the gravid uterus, but the fetal circulation remains uncompromised. The obstetric related indication would be your HELP syndrome. For this, antepartum doing plasma exchange is a category 4 thing, so it should not be done. But postpartum, it has a category 3, so it's used as a rescue therapy. You do 1 to 1.5 times plasma volume exchange with replacement fluid of plasma. What about other drugs during elimination during TPE? Problem is that you have data on how it is happening during dialysis, but not much on drug removal during TPE. So the logic says that anything that is highly protein bound and has a lower volume of distribution, they get effectively removed. So drug-based characteristics like a lower volume of distribution, high protein binding, if they have a reduced rate of endogenous clearance and a reduced distribution half-life, then they can be removed easily. TPE characteristics is if there is a how much volume you are removing, what is the interval between two sessions, and what was the time between the first and the last session, and when was your drug administered. With regards to the commonly used drugs that we use in the ICU, antibiotics, basically your beta lactam levels, it the action of this depends on the level being above a minimum inhibitory concentration. So that is why it requires a supplementary dose post procedure. Same goes for your drugs like enoxaparin, tacrolimus, and mycophenolic acid, and even for monoclonal antibodies. What are the complications of therapeutic plasma exchange? It could be access related, circuit related, and replacement fluid related. Access related is everything you have when you place a central line, basically risk of thrombus, central line related bloodstream infections, pneumothorax, bleeding. Circuit related would be clotting, high transmembrane pressure, air in the circuit, and filter fracture in case of membrane. And then the replacement fluid related would be transfusion related reactions, depletion, coagulopathy, immunoglobulin depletion, risk of infection, risk of hypotension, citrate accumulation, hypocalcemia. So, in summary, basically, the blood is removed from the patient, anticoagulated, passed through a nephrology machine where they either do a membrane-based or centrifuge-based separation. The pathogenic substances are removed, a replacement fluid is added, and then it is returned back to the patient. These are my references, and of course, I've also used the help of AI to understand the topic myself. Thank you.